The day I signed the closing papers on our house, my husband kissed me on the cheek and said, "We finally made it, babe." I remember smiling so wide my face hurt. I was 31 years old, a registered nurse at Luke's Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, and I had just bought a 3-bedroom Craftsman with the man I had married 8 months earlier. The neighbors waved from across the street. The realtor took a photo of us on the porch. I posted it that night with the caption, "Home." It got 412 likes. I want you to hold that image for a second. The porch, the smile, the likes, because that is the last picture I have where I didn't know. My husband's name was Derek. He was 34, a regional sales manager for a logistics company, gone 3 or 4 days a week to Louisville, Cincinnati, Indianapolis. When we met, I thought his travel schedule was exciting. He always came back with stories, good restaurants he'd found, funny things that happened in hotel lobbies. He was easy to love when he walked through the door. I didn't think much about the days he wasn't walking through it. We'd been in the house about 6 weeks when I noticed the water stain on the ceiling of the second bedroom. It wasn't enormous, maybe the size of a dinner plate, spreading out from the corner where the wall met the ceiling near the closet. I called a contractor named Roy Hutchins, who had a yard sign 2 streets over. He came by on a Thursday morning while I was finishing a night shift rotation, so my mother let him in. She'd been staying with us that week, helping us unpack boxes, the kind of thing she'd been doing my whole life, showing up quietly and making herself useful, without ever making it about herself. Roy texted me around 11 that morning. I was driving home from the hospital, still in scrubs, running on 4 hours of sleep and a gas station coffee. Found the moisture source. Also found something else. "Are you coming home soon?" I called him immediately. He didn't answer. He texted back, "Better to show you in person. It's not an emergency, but you should see it before anyone else does." I told myself it was probably mold, black mold behind the drywall, the kind that costs $12,000 to remediate and voids your home warranty. I prepared myself for that. I ran through the numbers in my head the rest of the drive home. It was not mold. Roy was standing in the second bedroom when I got there. My mother was in the kitchen making coffee, giving us space the way she always seemed to know to do. Roy had opened up a section of the closet wall, not a big hole, just enough to access the area behind the baseboards, where the water had been seeping in from a compromised pipe fitting. And sitting on the shelf he'd revealed, in the gap between the original wall and a section of drywall that had clearly been installed later, was a small fireproof lockbox. Gray metal, about the size of a shoebox, a combination lock on the front. "It was back there when I opened it up," Roy said. He wasn't looking at me in a dramatic way. He was looking at me the way a decent person looks at someone when they're about to say something they didn't ask to be in the middle of. I didn't touch it, but I figured new owners, something hidden in the wall you'd want to know before I patched everything back up. I stared at it for a long moment. "The previous owners," I started. "Been here since 1987, according to the county records," Roy said. "Couple in their 70s. Moved to Scottsdale to be near their daughter. Could be theirs." He paused. "Could be something else." I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. I called Derek. He didn't answer, which wasn't unusual mid-morning. I texted him, "Call me when you get a sec." Normal words. I was still in the mold remediation headspace. I was still holding the box at arm's length, literally and emotionally. Roy fixed the pipe, patched the wall, and left me his card in case I needed him back. My mother came into the bedroom doorway holding 2 mugs and looked at the box on the floor. "What's that?" "Found behind the wall," I said. She set my coffee down next to me and sat on the floor across from the box like we were about to play a board game. "That's my mother. She doesn't catastrophize. She just sits down with you." We looked up locksmiths. We looked up how to open a combination lockbox without the code. My mother found a YouTube video. Neither of us said out loud what we were actually worried about, which was nothing specific, yet just the low-frequency hum of something not adding up. Derek called back at 12:40. "Hey, sorry. Was in a meeting. What's up?" "We found a lockbox in the wall of the second bedroom," I said, "behind a section of drywall that looked newer than the rest. Roy thinks it was installed deliberately." Silence. Not the kind of silence where someone is processing information. A different kind. "Huh," he said finally. "That's weird. Probably the old owners." "Probably," I said. "Just toss it," he said. "Or drop it at the police station as found property or whatever. It's not ours." He moved on quickly. Asked how my drive home was. Mentioned he had a dinner that night with a client in Louisville and probably wouldn't call until late. Said he loved me. Hung up. I sat with the box in my lap for 20 minutes. Then I drove to a locksmith on Morse Road named Gary, who had a flag in his window and a photo of his grandkids on the counter, and I paid him $80 to open it. Inside, there was a phone, an older model Samsung, not a current one, maybe 2, 3 years old, and a charging cable wrapped around it, and a folded piece of paper that turned out to be a handwritten list of dates and locations, and what appeared to be initials. The phone was dead. I bought a compatible charger at a convenience store across the street and sat in my car in the parking lot and waited for it to come back to life. I need to stop here for a second and tell you what I was feeling, because it wasn't what you might expect. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't crying. I was in a strange, suspended state, the same thing that happens to me sometimes in the ER, when a situation turns bad fast and my body goes quiet and focused before my emotions catch up. Nurses call it clinical distance. It's not that you stop caring. It's that the part of your brain responsible for function takes over before the part responsible for feeling can slow you down. The phone turned on. The lock screen had no passcode. I opened the Messages app. I'm not going to describe everything I read. I'll just tell you this. The earliest message thread was dated 14 months before our wedding. The most recent was from 11 days ago, while Derek was supposedly in Indianapolis for a regional sales conference that I had, in fact, helped him pack for. Her name in the contact was a man's name. A coworker he'd mentioned before, someone I'd heard stories about, someone whose name I'd spoken out loud at our dinner table. I sat in that parking lot for a long time. A woman walked past with a stroller and a toddler holding her hand, and I watched them go, and I thought about how ordinary everything looked from the outside. How you can be completely obliterated on the inside and the parking lot just keeps being a parking lot. I drove home. My mother was in the kitchen. She took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. She just opened her arms and I walked into them and stood there for a while. She smelled like the same lotion she'd been using my whole life, some lavender thing from the drugstore, and I thought about being 7 years old and having a nightmare and her sitting on the edge of my bed. Some anchors hold even when everything else is drifting. Eventually she said, "Tell me." So I told her. She listened to the whole thing. She didn't gasp dramatically, or say terrible things about Derek, or try to fast forward to what I should do next. She asked a few quiet questions. She made me eat something. She said, "You don't have to decide anything today." That was the most useful thing anyone said to me in the next 72 hours. I didn't confront Derek that night. He called at 10:15 from Louisville, sounding relaxed and normal, asking how my day went, whether Roy had fixed the pipe. I told him yes. I told him the lockbox turned out to be empty, probably just something the old owners forgot. I don't know why I said it that way. I think I needed time. I think part of me needed to be absolutely certain before I blew up a life I had also built, also invested in, also loved. I spent the next 4 days being very methodical. I have a colleague at the hospital, a woman named Diane, who's been through her own version of this, about 6 years ago now, and came out the other side with a clarity I've always admired. I called her on day 2. She didn't offer opinions. She just said, "Get a consult before you say a word to him." She gave me the name of a family law attorney. I also called my brother in Denver. He's former Army, 2 tours, now works in logistics security, and he has this way of being absolutely unshockable that I have relied on my whole life. I told him everything. He said, "Okay, you have the phone, you have the box, you have the dates, don't give any of that back." Then he said, "I'm sorry, sis. You didn't deserve this." Those were the first words that made me cry. Something about being seen clearly by someone who loves you. I went to the attorney on day 3. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she had an office in Westerville with a small succulent on her windowsill, and a very calm voice. She walked me through what documentation mattered and what didn't, what my options looked like in Ohio, what the next 6 months might involve. I took notes on a yellow legal pad. Nurse brain again, write things down, keep your hands busy, process later. On day 5, I asked Derek to sit down with me at the kitchen table. I had thought about how to do this for days. I'd rehearsed versions of it in my head while driving, while walking the neighborhood at night when I couldn't sleep, while standing in the break room at work staring at the coffee maker. I thought I knew how it would go. I put the lockbox on the table between us. He looked at it. Something shifted in his face, just a flicker, very fast, and then his expression went carefully neutral. "I thought you said it was empty," he said. I know what I said. I slid the phone across the table. He didn't pick it up. He looked at it for a long time, and I watched him make the calculation, the one where you assess how much the other person knows before you decide what version of the truth to offer. I had seen patients do this, usually about something much smaller, a missed medication, a fall they didn't want to admit, and it always looked the same. That half second of arithmetic before the words come out. "This isn't what it looks like," he said. "Derek," I said. "I'm a trauma nurse. I have held people's hands when they were dying, and I have sat with families when I had to tell them something they didn't want to hear, and I have learned that the most respectful thing you can do for someone in a hard moment is to not make it harder with a lie." I paused. "Please don't do that to me." He was quiet for a long time. And then, slowly, he told me the truth. Not all of it, I don't think I got all of it that day, but enough. Enough to confirm what I already knew. Enough to close a door that I'd been standing in front of for almost a week, not quite ready to step through. I asked him to leave that evening. He went to a hotel. He texted twice that night. I didn't respond. My mother stayed with me for 10 more days. She didn't treat me like I was fragile. She treated me like I was a person going through something hard who was going to be okay. And somehow that framing helped more than anything else. She cooked. We watched old movies. She told me stories about her own life decisions she'd made, things she'd had to let go of that she'd never told me before. I learned things about my mother that week that made me love her more and understand myself better. Grief opens strange doors sometimes. I went back to work. The ER is a place where perspective arrives whether you want it or not. You stand next to someone's worst day, and you keep moving, and somewhere in that motion your own worst day gets put into a context that doesn't minimize it but does clarify it. I am not the first person to survive a marriage that turned out to be something other than what it appeared to be. I will not be the last. What matters is what you choose to do with your hands when the dust settles. I filed the paperwork in November. Patricia Chen's office on a gray Tuesday morning, the succulent still on the windowsill, my brother on the phone from Denver telling me he was proud of me. The process was not fast and it was not easy, and there were days I drove home from work and sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before I could go inside. That's allowed. You're allowed to sit in the driveway. I kept the house. That part matters to me more than I expected it to. Roy came back and properly patched the closet wall, and I painted that whole bedroom a deep green that I'd always wanted and never quite had permission to choose. I put a reading chair in the corner. I put a plant on the windowsill. I made it mine. In the spring, I started volunteering one Saturday a month at a free clinic on the east side of the city, a place that serves people without insurance, walk-in only, chronically understaffed and underfunded, and somehow still running because of a small group of people who show up. I'd been meaning to do it for 2 years and kept finding reasons not to. I don't know exactly why the divorce pushed me toward it. Maybe it had something to do with needing to be useful in a way that was simple and clear, where the transaction was just. Here is a person who needs something. Here is what I can give. I met a woman there named Beverly, in her 60s, who had been volunteering every Saturday for 11 years without missing a single one. I asked her once what kept her coming back so consistently. She thought about it for a minute, and then said, "Honey, I figure the best way to keep from drowning in your own life is to get a little bit outside it on a regular basis." I wrote that down. I think about Roy a lot, actually. He was just a contractor who came to fix a pipe and found something he didn't ask to find. He could have patched the wall and left and said nothing. Nobody would have blamed him, but he stood in that bedroom and he told me, plainly and without drama, that I should know. That small decision, the choice to say something honest when it would have been easier not to, is not a small thing. I believe it changed the course of my life. I believe I am better, clearer, more myself because of it than I would have been in the alternative. The alternative where I didn't know. The alternative where I kept posting pictures of the porch and counting the likes and calling it home. This is home. The green room is home. Beverly and the Saturday clinic is home. My mother calling on Tuesday evenings is home. My brother texting terrible jokes from Denver is home. You can lose a version of your life and find out the new version fits better. I know that sounds like something you'd read on a greeting card, And I know it doesn't feel that way when you're sitting in a parking lot on Morse Road watching a toddler walk past, holding a phone that is telling you something you don't want to know, but I am telling you it's true. Because I am the person who was sitting in that parking lot, and I am also the person writing this now, and those two people are not the same. That's the part that surprised me most. Not the betrayal. The growth. The strange, stubborn, unasked for growth. I hope if you're going through something that brought you to this story, you'll let yourself sit in the driveway for as long as you need to, and then I hope you'll go inside. Paint the room green. Show up on Saturday. Call your mother. It gets better. Not easier, I want to be honest with you, but better. Clearer. More yours. That's enough.